Hi, I'm Paul. For this video, I'm going to talk about the way that my mind seems to work with self-investigation. I hear a lot of people who are spiritual or teachers or gurus saying that you should get rid of thoughts and not buy into them at all. I don't really know if that's quite the right way of dealing with things. Which I'll explain maybe a little bit further on in the video. You know that I don't take compliments anymore. It's not that I'm being rude. I don't really take criticism either. But you see, when people compliment me, it just doesn't go anywhere. There's nowhere for it to sit. There's nothing for it to do. Which doesn't mean that you shouldn't compliment me. Doesn't mean that you're wasting your time. It's not an offensive thing. It's just that it doesn't really go anywhere. And anyway, we're talking about the way that my mind works with self-investigation. So I thought I would pick out a few things which had run through my head yesterday. And one of them was I went shopping. And whilst I was in a shop, there was a young lad, probably early 20s, with, I assume, his daughter, who was maybe two-ish, maybe 2.5. And his daughter was kind of trailing behind, and she was doing the normal, typical daughtery sort of stuff. I want this, and so on. And the young lad was saying, "Look, mate, don't be starting none of this now." And then the young girl started getting upset and started crying. So then he said, "Look, mate, if you carry on like this, you're going to your mum's, and you're never coming to see me again." And when I first seen this, I thought to myself, "No, that's not fair. I mean, she's going to grow up with problems. She's going to suffer." And I just thought, you know, it's pretty cruel. But then I had to take a look at this, what I was saying. I was kind of saying this shouldn't be, this is wrong. So I look at the daughter in my own mind and I say, what will happen to her when she's older? And you see the way that he's behaving. I would say that it's causing her mind to fragment things, to hide away from things already. With a fragmented mind, when you get older, you start to become, let's say, scattery. So maybe she might grow up and become or get used to things like alcohol and recreational drugs, maybe go out partying and try to fit in with certain sort of people. And then I suddenly realized, well, this is him. Looking at him, this is the way he seems to be. He had his walk, tough guy sort of thing. And I started to realize that, yeah, okay, it's easy to look at her and say, I feel sorry for her, this shouldn't happen. And yeah, I do. But the dad doesn't know any different. This is what's happened to him when he was younger. This is what he's learned. This is how his condition is. He doesn't know any different. So it's easy for me to come along and say it shouldn't be like that, but is that really helpful? Let's just say I got into a conversation with this young lad, and I had thoughts like that in my head. That he was cruel, he should wake up and see sense, and so on. And I speak to this person. How am I supposed to actually speak to the person or even see the person When I've got thoughts in my head like that, all I can see is the thoughts in my head. But if I take a look at it in my own head, and I understand this isn't his fault, this is this is his conditioning. He doesn't know any different. If I understand that in my head and accept it, that's how it is, then if I speak to this person, I could actually speak to the person. And perhaps that speaking to the person with that sort of compassion can help the person see some of his own problems. Maybe that can make a change. But as long as I've got negative thoughts in my head about how it shouldn't happen, all I'm going to do is talk to the person, kind of use the person as a mirror, where I can project my negative thoughts onto the mirror to reflect back at me to say how I've got it right, when I haven't. So we can say, is this right? Is it right that we should even take on these thoughts? Should I even have recognised that in the first place and said it's wrong? If I was really non-dual and spiritual, then that wouldn't have happened. See, I don't know. I hear all these spiritual teachers saying you need to get rid of the I and get rid of all the thoughts and that's it. But I also see in a lot of spiritual teachers there still seems to be an ego. I've been to Buddhist temples quite a few times before and I see the monks there. And I speak to some of the monks and sometimes I do challenge them with some of my knowledge. But it doesn't get anywhere. I mean, it really does seem like the monks will listen to you and project no thoughts forward. And that's great, but the monks, dare I say, isolate themselves, but they do isolate themselves in quite a safe place with very, very little distractions, but we're not in that place. And there are distractions, and I think distractions are always going to come through. But I think the idea is to catch the distractions, take a look at them, break them down, see them in the right way, see that it's not just you trying to justify yourself. In other words, thoughts can arrive. Maybe they could be negative. You've got to be careful not to take them forward into the future and then start creating an outcome from your thoughts or making a judgment on a person from your thoughts. So there was another thing that I looked at, and that was last night. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was having a dream. And as I woke up, I realised the dream, and I thought to myself, yeah, that's really interesting. I might put that in a video tomorrow. It sounds really interesting. But then after about 5 seconds, I completely forgot. Couldn't remember what I was dreaming about, what I was talking about. Tried to find it, but I couldn't. And I thought to myself, well, we do forget our dreams. Why? Why is it that we forget our dreams? Many times we do wake up and we're like, yeah, I remember it, but I try to remember it, and the more I try, it goes. So then I ask myself, why? Why is it that we forget our dreams? And then it brought me to something a few weeks ago. I was talking to a person, and we was having a talk about our younger life, the things we used to do, climbing trees with our old friends. We also talked about other conversations as well. I can't remember what the other one was, but let's just say it was going on a train journey. And then that night I went to bed and I had a dream of going on the train journey with one of the old friends. See, it seems in dreams we try to put pieces together in our minds In our waking day, when we've got the ego, it tries to fragment things, tries to separate. And when you fall asleep at night, that's when your ego falls away. And in that, your mind starts trying to piece things together, which I think are what are your dreams. Trying to put a picture together into a whole rather than being fragmented. So if this is the case, that dreams are trying to put things together, when we wake up, it's done. It's together. Why do we need to remember it? It's gone. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I think that's probably the case. That means that in our waking day, if we didn't fragment, if we actually looked at everything exactly the way that it is and put it all together and didn't try to run away from things or make excuses or so on and so on, then we probably wouldn't dream. There wouldn't be a need to. So when we look at the lad who was shopping, if I completely dismissed the whole situation, would that be classed as fragmenting? I don't know. If I made a slight judgment, if I said to myself, that's unfair, that's wrong, and then didn't look into it in my own mind, then that would be fragmented. And then perhaps at night time, my mind might have to start working things out and trying to put the picture together. I don't know. I've noticed a few times lately that I've spoken to people who watch the news on telly or social media, and they tell me that it's horrible watching the news. It's so bad what's happening, and it kind of puts them in a bad mood for the day or so on. I ask them, well, why do you watch it? And they say, well, I just try and tell myself that there's nothing I can do about it. So I wondered, what does this mean? There's nothing I can do about it. Why put yourself through that and then try to justify it by saying there's nothing I can do about it? So it seems that the people who watch the news find it very hard to stop watching news. Like it's an addiction. So we can say if it's an addiction, we're getting something out of it. So what? So it seems to me, I did a video the other week, which was my deepest insight. And in my deepest insight, I was trying to say that the unconscious mind of the things that we don't see goes way beyond just self. I think it's the suffering in the whole world, the fact that we're allowing it to happen. I think that this creates a large part of the unconscious mind. We know we're part of nature, but we've neglected it. Wars happen and we just dismiss it. Say, I can't do anything about it, so I'll just leave it be. So I do wonder if we've got this sorrow, guilt, deep sorrow, deep guilt in our unconscious mind about what's happening in the world and how we're allowing it. We're not doing anything about it. So we feel guilty in our unconscious that we're not doing anything about it. But this keeps on cropping up in our minds. We can't keep it low down. So what do? We watch the news. We see all the horrors in the world. And then we justify our own self by pushing it back down into our unconscious by saying, well, I can't do anything about it. What do you want me to do? And then all of a sudden that distracts you onto justifying yourself and leaving what's happening in the world alone. Does that help? I think this is one of the problems with a lot of spirituality, where they say just the silence of the mind. I don't think that's the right way. Things happen in the world. We can't ignore everything. I think that trying to silence the mind is not something that you do and it's done, but I think it's continuous. I don't think we could just say, right, I'll get rid of the ego, and that'll be that. It'll always keep on trying to come back because it's the unconscious mind trying to creep through. So I think the only real way of trying to find peace is to look within, to do the inquiry, to say break things down, but it's more put things together because it's already broken. Try to understand deeply. It's easy to judge a person, but it doesn't change anything. Anyway, uh, I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for listening.